Welcome back. A reminder, we have information on WKYT.com right now if you want to reach out for help. You know, no parent wants to believe that their loved one is addicted. They often go through months, even years of denial, all the while their family member is lying, stealing, and manipulating to feed their addiction. It happens to families of all incomes and status. Tonight, one family's journey through a nightmare and the lessons learned.
I was in Focus as a kid, in the advanced educational classes in elementary school, always straight A's, done everything right.
Vanessa Keaton graduated with honors from high school.
Everybody loved her. She was popular, everybody loved her.
We were raised to know that we were loved. There was never a time in my life where I did not know that my parents loved me.
I knew she was doing things she shouldn't do, but I don't know, I guess it just didn't scare me as much then.
Vanessa hid a dark side from her family. At 15, she was experimenting with alcohol and drugs. At 17, it was pain pills. Her mother didn't approve of the partying, but missed seeing how deep it had become.
As her growing up, you would never have dreamed that that's what she would have done.
And then it became, I couldn't just do it on the weekends. I had to have it during the week. I was sneaking and getting high, after school or skipping school and getting high.
As her drug abuse grew, Vanessa moved away from home and held down a job as a dental assistant. Her visits back home were a couple of holidays a year.
And we saw her at Easter and maybe at Christmas, and you see someone for 3 days, you can just about hide anything for that period of time.
Vanessa began shooting up pills, lost her job, stole to support her habit, and did some time in jail.
The fear of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and something told you to wake up and pray because you hadn't heard from her in 2 days.
A judge ordered her to treatment, and the first day she met a woman 17 months sober.
If she could do that, I wonder if I could get 17 months sober. And in my head, that was as far as I could get, was 17 months. But I was willing to try.
She was gone from my house 6 days before she called back and said, they've got a bed for me. And I will go to treatment if you will help me. And I said, I'll help you if you mean it. But if you don't, I'm out.
Vanessa became the first person to go through recovery at ARC's Karen's Place in Louisa. That was 10 years ago, and she's been sober ever since, and now works at ARC.
God uses my story every day as hope for people who walk through the doors in any of the facilities around ARC.
She's a miracle. A true miracle.
God allowed her to live through all that mess to bring her to where she is now so she can help other people.
I wondered what her mother would say to parents who suspect drug abuse with a son or daughter.
Go with your gut. If your gut or that check in your spirit says, oh, that doesn't feel right, go with it. Face it. The hugs are abundant at our house. Nobody knows, do they?
No.
We're joined now by Pat Fogarty, Senior Vice President of Operations with Addiction Recovery Care. Pat, her addiction was 10, 11 years ago, and you can still see the pain. You can still see the emotions there. At some point, families often have to just cut the person off because they're so deep in addiction. How does that family handle that moment?
Well, you have to get to a certain point to get to that level. So how we often categorize that is raising the bottom. Some people's rock bottom is an overdose. Some people may be going to jail. But our goal is to raise that bottom so it's not that low. And that's really the family educating themselves, learning about the disease of addiction. Whether you believe it's a disease or not is really a futile argument. You have to treat it as a disease because there's very much biological elements to it.
As a parent, I have been there. And the denial is so deep. You don't want to believe that your son or daughter, your loved one, is in addiction. How does a parent get around that kind of denial and face the facts?
It has nothing to do with your parenting. It affects every socioeconomic class, as we've discussed on this program. The deal is you have to get past that through support. And there's tons of support right now for families. 10 years ago, it was few and far between. But now society is really embracing addiction. There's still stigma attached. It's still the dark secret of many families. But we see the disaster and the calamity it's causing Kentucky and the rest of the nation. It's important to get that information and communicate with your loved one. Lucky there is that support out there, and you know, with Addiction Recovery Care, we're always willing to share any support we can, support groups. I recommend talking to someone that's been through it, having someone to lean on, kind of like in a peer situation.
As a parent, you don't get a handbook, even when they're born. But when it comes to talking to, let's say, a teenager, we have somebody listening right now, for example. How do you talk to your kids about drug abuse, since it's so prevalent in this state?
Well, that's a big problem that we have, is prevention. And prevention's a key aspect of combating this crisis. And it really starts really early. And I can speak, I'm in recovery, my wife's in recovery, meaning our child has a very high, or both of our kids have a very high percentage chance of having a substance use disorder if they ever engage in drug use. So it has to happen early with the family, should start in the schools, a very broad education on all the aspects of addiction.
And I want to thank that family. I didn't get a chance to do that for being public like they were, because the mother there, Conjita, also works at ARC. And at ARC, you do have a number of people, a lot of people who have been through recovery and now are on the other side. So, boy, they have a real different look at this, don't they?
Yeah, you get both sides. You see both sides of things. We have a large contingency of our staff that is in recovery, and we have a lot of the staff that may not be in recovery themselves, but we're affected by it. I mean, it's affecting everybody at this point.
Well, congratulations on your recovery and your work with ARC. Pat Fogarty, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. It's a one-of-a-kind program. We will take you to a Kentucky jail where survivors bring hope to people suffering behind bars.